We are here in our shed to studio, and we want to talk about why there's a big spider. Decent size.
Worse.
You have seen worse. Why did we convert a shed to a house? Why did we decide on living in a shed to house with, at that time, 5 to 6 people? It started with 5. And now 7 people. Why did we do this weird tiny house thing and then do it again? We're in this shed to studio right now. Why did we want to do this? And a quick thank you to United Portable Buildings for sponsoring this video. More on that later. Back in 2013, whenever we had 2 boys, it really just started with the whole land part of it. It was a Christmas. I saw this magazine about creating like a 1-acre sustainable farm. And at that same Christmas, out at Kelly's parents' place, which they live on like a 1-acre suburban lot, not really land at all, but their neighborhood has this creek that goes through, and I noticed that, I guess he was 2 or 3, and then we had a 1-year-old, that they just really lit up whenever they were out on land. That our boys had some different personality. They thrived on having the space.
What land did you go to?
We were just walking. They had the creek that goes through your parents' neighborhood.
Oh, boys are just different. Boys are just different. And they will turn anything into a weapon, and they will turn everything into an adventure, and all of a sudden you're just in this game that you didn't know you were already a part of. Like, they wake up playing adventure. And we were outgrowing that lot.
Because we lived in a 1-acre suburban lot. So we're telling the story about what happened at my parents, and then at Kelly's parents, but where we were living was a very, very small 1-acre lot. And of that 1-acre lot, the front yard was like on a 45-degree angle. It was
I think we had a good first. Oh, they're going to get mad because I interrupted you.
Nah.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead. Darling, I love to hear the sound of your voice. Please continue such a gripping story.
Kelly is referring to how other people on our main channel, Better Together Homestead, say that Kelly can interrupt me. That's just how we talk. We interrupt each other.
The internet has a lot of opinions.
So yes, so that's just where we are. Like, we thought we wanted to buy land. Yes, we got to that thought in 2013. We want to buy land. And if you want to move onto land and live on the land, you're going to need some sort of house. So what are all the things that we were talking about of homes that we wanted to live in?
So, like, why did we choose a shed? Like, why did we live
what were
in
all
a
the
shed
things
house?
that we were thinking of? We were thinking of a typical traditional house. We were thinking of RVs, possible. Now, RV would have been temporary. We knew that.
Yeah.
We were thinking of a barndominium.
A mobile
home. Yeah, there's like the whole manufactured home. Mm-hmm. I briefly looked into like a Quonset hut.
Yeah, that was a no.
Kelly, absolutely.
Also not a yurt. Nothing wrong with a yurt. We're just not yurt people.
we thought about a yurt. We thought about, it's like the Quonset hut, and then at that same thing, there's a dome.
Or like
a concrete
an A-frame home.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was that concrete. Like an earth ship.
Yeah. All of those, it really kind of came down to probably a barndominium or a shed to house. Something that really, the reason why we were saying it super early here in the video is it came down to money. And I would assume that a lot of you are thinking of a shed to house because of money.
Well, you want to know, like, is it cheaper? Will I save more money if I do a shed to house? Will I have a better quality of life if I do a shed to house? Why would anyone choose a shed to house? Sure, what's the difference between this and all the other things?
And the number one thing that Kelly said, she said like the thing that stuck in my head, and then you would say that the second one, that maybe you said it or you didn't, I remembered it. But the number one thing that I think that we know that you said was, you said, if we're going to leave all of the comforts and conveniences of suburbia, we lived in a big city outside of Houston. It was not really big city like Houston, but Katy, Texas, that's where we lived. It was just growing like crazy. It is one of those thriving suburban places that they had, like that Katy ISD had like 5 high schools.
Yeah, it was a lot. I think
So,
like 7 at the time.
I went to high school, they had one high school. Basically one high school, but they had like an upper school of grades 10, 11th, and 12th, and they had one older school that had just the 9th graders. But basically, that's still just one high school. This was huge, and it just continued to grow and continued to get bigger, and the traffic got worse and worse. But we had a Whole Foods, we had a Sprouts, we had a Costco, we had so many restaurants, we had churches, like our main church. We had all the conveniences. And what Kelly said was, if we're going to leave all of that, I want to make sure that we do it without a mortgage.
Well, I didn't want to trade. I didn't want to trade 7 acres or trade what we had in the city for 7 acres. Like, it really had, in my mind, had to be like a forward move and not just a lateral move. So I didn't want to just take the $2,000 that we were spending in Katy, leave everything that was easy about that city, and make it really hard to just spend $2,000 a month on a mortgage in the country, because it was just like, that's not quality of life. I wanted an upgrade to quality of life. So we hit this fork right before we started to consider shed to house. And the fork was, our family was growing. Our neighborhood was aging. Like, the people in our neighborhood, we just bought a really great house. And it was like, everyone in our neighborhood was a lot older. Our house was like, we were the youngest people on the block, youngest couple, youngest kids. There really weren't a ton of kids in our neighborhood. So we were like, all right, everybody our age was going to the next McMansion size. Like, they were going up from 2,000 to like 2,500, 3,000 square foot homes. The current was carrying us toward the next upgrade, or we were going to totally buck the system, jump out of the current altogether, and go with something completely different, which is why we searched for the property in the first place. You felt like, hey, this is a really central location to all of our family. All the things were lining up. So when I made that comment, it was really more of a challenge. Like, I don't know if I totally am bought into this idea that we're going to move to the country. So all the stars have to align. Everything has to be perfect. I was like, God has to provide the property. Well, that's a big reach. This will take months. God has to provide the money for this. Oh, we're in our 30s. We already had a house. How could we have a second property? That's impossible. And then it was like, God has to provide the lender. Our lenders were never going to agree to give us, who had completely solo income. We're like...
Well, what was going on in our lifetime, like of our family, work-wise, career-wise, financial, at that time?
Yeah.
Like, do you remember?
Well, you had just left your job. So all our income was made out of an essential oil company. Like, this was our entire income. And he was like, oh, we could just be YouTubers. This will make so much sense.
No, YouTube had nothing to do with this then. Remember? This was, so
Oh,
to
because
fill
this
in the
was
gap,
right after Georgia, or Ella was
to fill
just
in
a little bitty.
Yeah, to fill in the gap, I was a video producer. Like, I do video stuff. A video turned wannabe homesteader. And I was a video producer at our church. So I ran like all the Sunday morning stuff, and I did a lot of the promotional stuff of this kind of semi-mega church, like bigger church. And at that time, pretty much whenever we started getting the the bug of homesteading. We started getting excited about gardening and some sort of like, growing our own food stuff. It was whenever Kelly, whenever we had the two boys, and then I think probably you were pregnant with Ella at that time. And this was 2013. And within that time, between 2013 and the beginning of 2015, was whenever we learned about homesteading and God started calling me out of doing ministry. And at that same time, a lot happened at this time. We were doing the essential oil business, doTERRA. And we were able to kind of get to that line of like, maybe we can make that risk. We can take that jump and go full time. And I've always been self-employed, so I kind of knew for a bit that I had that as a safety net to do video.
But the self-employment is not favorable when you want to get loans.
Correct.
When you want financing from a major institution. So in line with all those things.
Absolutely.
We're going to make that noisy. I'm thinking we're never going to even come to the road of whether or not we're going to buy any property. I'm like, let my husband be completely entertained.
You never told me that. You never told me that.
They're so cute.
You're saying that you did not believe?
I'm saying I have learned, and at this point, we were just a few years into marriage, but I have learned this. If I let you take a plan far enough, it's either going to be crazy mad good, or it's going to fail. But either way, if you have the space to run the idea, it's so much better than if I try and shut it down. So I just keep saying yes to things.
So whenever I flipped out in our bedroom, running all the numbers.
While I'm in my underwear. And I'm mad at you because I think you could leave our family just so that you can run after this homestead dream.
No, but we haven't bought the property yet. Whenever we got
a different time I was in my underwear while you were freaking out?
Well, I'm saying, once we bought the property, that was whenever we had to go to marriage counseling. Mm-hmm. that was whenever things got bad. Buying the property was kind of fun in my mind.
It was fun.
I never thought that you, in the back of your mind, ever questioned that we were going to be able to buy it. I knew that you said, like, if this, and this.
This was the biggest risk. Now, I was completely prepared to take the risk. If God showed up with 1, 2, and 3 things, I'm like, well, then there's no way to deny this. This is 100% the right timing. This is where we need to be. Let's do it. That's what I was prepared to take. But the idea, like the audacity
of
us to
we are going off the rails, off of Shed the House
but
for a moment.
This is how we chose it, is the audacity to even ask the Lord that he would, provide these things. It was just throwing the fleece out and saying, like, all right, let's get it wet. Like, this was going to be a full-on yes, this is what we're supposed to do, or a completely shut door, cemented in. There was no way we were going to ever homestead. So I was willing to take the risk, but did I think that we would cash out our 401k so that we could buy this property? No.
I had no idea. And did you think,
Does this
were
make
you surprised?
You think I'm a better or worse wife?
Oh, so much better. Yes. So much better.
See, look at the points I get for
Absolutely.
that. See?
The fact that you were not bought in 100%, like I don't know, I don't want to say those words, but the fact that you were very, I guess, surprised that we did cash in the 401k to buy the land, it makes me want to know, like, were you shocked and terrified whenever we got the approval of owner financing?
No. Am I shocked and terrified whenever we make plans? No, because exactly what I'm saying. I know that if I kibosh, if I say no, it is so much worse for you, and in turn, worse for the rest of us. It's like putting a racehorse in that merry-go-round carousel. It is like all that horse is so discontented, that horse just wants to run. That is a not happy situation. That's what happens because you're wired to do and think outside the box and like push the limits. And we'd built enough trust where I was like, if this is a bust and we hate this, you'll end it. Like, I knew that you weren't going to make our family miserable for the sake of your dream.
Y'all, if you're married, this is gold. Like, this is so... I had
It's
no
just
idea.
true.
I had no idea that this conversation was going to go this way. This is great. Thank you. Yes. You get all the points. You win. Way
I don't
to
need
go.
to win. I think that's the difference. I didn't need to win. I was secure enough to say, let's do this thing. I'll go all in. But also, like, because I could say, these are my qualifications. You can't just go take out, a $50,000 loan and buy this property. We're not going to do that. And that wasn't the case. That wasn't what we had to do.
Yeah. So, in 2000...
I would also pause and interrupt you one more time to wrap that up.
Go for it.
Needless to say, because we were sitting in our second building on our 7 acres in Central Texas, all of those things were satisfied.
So what happened then?
After we bought it,
In 2015,
I think we nerded out.
we bought it.
Yeah.
In 2015, we camped out here.
Well, we had already had a permaculture guy come and walk around and say, where should we put this?
But we still
house?
hadn't decided the house.
Right, but we were deciding, where do we put it? What does the land want? What is the property asking for us? We didn't just want a shed to house. We wanted the right house on the property that we'd purchased, and we wanted it to serve the land, because nobody, I think I just said this in another video, nobody is homesteading for clout. Nobody is homesteading because they just think it's so cute. We're homesteading because there's lesson in this and there's value in living on a property. So what we needed, I guess, was a vehicle to get there, metaphorical.
We've always said that.
Yeah, shed to house was the way to get on our property, because we'd already made the pivot, right? We'd chosen the fork in the road. There was going to be, we're not going to go bigger and better in a fancier neighborhood with more amenities. We're going to go simpler, in a lot of ways harder, but in all of the ways more fruitful for our family. This was what we needed to do. And that was a weird thing, to be fully committed and all in on this live on the land mindset, because sometimes it felt like we were rejecting or saying what our friends were doing in the city was wrong. It wasn't. It isn't. It isn't wrong for them, but it was right for us to pivot. And our life looks totally different. Everything we built while we were in the city was laying foundation for the skills we'd have to learn here. So once we found out we were going to own this, I think we geeked out. I think we went full on, how do we make this property the most amazing thing? And I would say one thing that sold me on shed to house was seeing one. Looking in a shed on as you're driving on the highways in Texas, there's tons of shed dealers all over the place. And I was like, hell no. No. And I'm sure I even said it. I was like, you're nuts. I'm not moving my children into a shed, because all I saw was the shell. But then when we could apply floor plans, house floor plans into the perimeter of the shell, then things felt like we could live there.
Yeah, we were able to see the potential. We were able to see, hey, it doesn't have to look like, I don't know, at that time was whenever we started watching Homestead Rescue. But basically we started getting into the tiny house. Oh, tiny house on wheels. We thought about a tiny house on wheels as well.
And it made sense.
And all of those things.
Those all made sense until we factored in kids.
Well, I think the tiny house on wheels was probably barndominium, tiny house on wheels, and shed to house. We had talked about a mobile home, and I also remember in terms of the mortgage conversation, you also said, if we're doing this, you don't remember this, but you said you wanted an adventure house.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay.
Because I really hate the word journey. I'm like, don't tell me we're going on a journey. That sounds awful.
But meaning you didn't
But tell me we're going on an adventure. I'm all in.
But a mobile home was boring for you.
Well,
It just wasn't what you wanted. You didn't want all of the mobile home. It's totally fine.
I think it just felt like a house.
It is not. It is like, you want a mobile home, you want to buy land.
Yeah.
Get a mobile home. If that is, you will probably do it cheaper, I will say.
Yep.
because it all comes in one. You're going to get your mobile home. You're going to get all the finishes, but they're mobile home finishes. You're not going to get our kitchen. You're not going to get all of the shiplap.
The exact same conversation I have with a friend who lives in a mobile home. She's building her big house, and she was like, the amount of repairs that we have just let go. She's
What's her name?
She's like, cabinets fall off, like the fronts of cabinets fall off. We just don't repair them because we don't care.
For real?
They're going to go move into, like you're saying this, the quality of the cabinetry. And we have IKEA. Like, we're not talking you need granite countertops and like hardwood cabinets. We're just saying.
Quartz.
We have quartz.
We do have quartz. I mean, because we wanted to make bread on it.
But my point is simply, I didn't want those finishings. I didn't want to be confined to those layouts. I did want adventure because we're doing this crazy thing. Like, we figured this. If we're whatever we're going to put onto the property, it had to be able to be flipped and turned around and sold for more than what we paid for it, because I was not about to get trapped into hating this life. And I know that you guys are going to have such opinions of me, and welcome. Leave them in the comments. You can't hurt my feelings at this point. But there are so many things that it was like, this is a huge risk. We feel completely different after 5 years of like being wise about how we spent. But the last thing I wanted to do was drop a really expensive home on this property and us try and sell it and not be able to. Now,
so let's expand.
Do I
Hold
know?
on. Let's expand on that, because you kind of glossed over it a little bit, I think. So what I hear you saying is that we wanted to have an exit strategy.
Yeah.
So we talked about you have to know that for us to be able to make these types of decisions, and for Kelly, I guess, to trust me for these big, crazy life changes, she trusts me in the sense that I am someone who will work out all the options and come prepared with a spreadsheet and all of the safety nets everywhere, because I've had financial strife. Is that what it is? I've had financial issues in my previous life, meaning whenever I was a kid.
Like your family growing up had financial struggle.
I mean, for a brief period of time. So
caused conflict in your family.
So I'm always trying to live off of less than we make and have safety nets.
And I love that.
So we knew that we were going to buy a property that at the very least was a good investment. Yeah. We weren't going to buy landlocked. We're not going to buy in West Texas where we couldn't sell it.
Well, we could sell it, exactly.
Yeah. The first year after we bought this property, it was already more than what we paid for. So I already knew that was cashing out the 401k. We were just moving it from one investment to another, that we could feed ourselves. So a 401k can't exactly feed you right away. But when, in terms of the house, we weren't going to build a $400,000 or $500,000 house and be turned and get
or
flipped.
Even a $200,000 house.
Exactly. Not we even had a chance. Yeah. When we were building this house, we had a chance, and we were talking that at the moment they were able to build a 16 by 52. So our house is 16 by 48. And it was a big conversation. Or maybe they could go 60. I think it was just 52. I said, hey, this is the cheapest that we will ever be able to get this small extension. It will be way more expensive to try to get this extra square footage. And you said, nope. Not only do you want to scale down, because it would have been more expensive on the actual shell, the building of the house itself, but then Kelly knew that was more flooring, that was more walls, drywall, that was more, spray foam. It was more everything to finish it out. And so
and that didn't feel like adventure. You're right. Like, you're reminding me of that phrase. That was like adventure, adventure, adventure.
Because we knew.
But it wasn't going to be plywall on the wall hanging animal heads.
No, you wanted to scale down the cost as small as you could, so that you could upscale. Yeah. You wanted it tight, but really nice things. Like, You
Right.
wanted, at that time, it would be way more expensive. You wanted, almost, we had the discussion, you almost wanted a full wraparound porch.
Yeah.
And it just didn't really work with how the mini splits were going to be.
Yeah.
And so we scaled that down. But we still have huge
Huge.
porches. I mean, our laundry room is on our back porch. Our front porch is playtime everywhere. It is candlelight dinners everywhere. It is
That sounds
fantastic.
very romantic.
It is a vision.
You'll have to watch
Candlelight.
another video for that.
Yes. So we knew that we weren't sure. I'm going to ask you that question. How long did you think we would actually be here?
Okay. So I thought done deal. But I wanted the exit strategy in case. Because in the same way that I am completely down,
Speak to the people.
in the same way I'm completely down to like take the risk. Yeah, if all these things line up, it's a yes. Like I can't deny that this is what we should do next. I also wanted to hold it loosely that we were signing up for something really hard and we were signing our kids up for something really hard. And if our family was suffering, like if we couldn't persevere through the hardship and our family was suffering, we needed a way out. We also still had like a really little kid. So it was like, I don't want to be foolish with our money just because we have a bunch from our house sale and we can do whatever we want with it. I still wanted to practice these super wise principles that were like, don't spend more than you make. Let's not have our house payment. Even building this house out, we were building it with cash. And I think that gave us security to do whatever the heck we wanted. Debt crushes us. It might not feel that way for you. You might be much better at leveraging it. But for us, to have ourselves under the thumb of someone else and be beholden, especially when you create your own income, it's like you're managing all these things yourself. So the idea that we could live here, I was all in on. I just wanted to be wise about it. And I do think there's margin for that. I think there's a lot of space where you can decide, yeah, I want to go low cost on the size of my house because I want shiplap ceilings or because I want us to have a kitchen that is going to be in good shape. So I'm going to have the IKEA people come build it because I don't trust our skill at building. Like there were just trade-offs for things. I think most people do this unless you're super irresponsible with your money, in which case you do live with a lot of stress. A huge selling point on even being able to say that this shed house idea was going to be an upgrade instead of this like just lateral move coming from the city to the country with exact same amount of cost was that our financial stress was out. This was not stressful. It was stressful taking on the workload of choosing flooring, like all the decisions you have to make to build. But we were doing that in cash. I wasn't going to be under a loan. I wasn't going to have to pay that loan back. This was a huge upgrade for me to not have that burden and to take things as they come. So when we moved in, we had walls, we had texture, but we didn't have paint, we didn't have floors, we didn't have a kitchen, we didn't have any shelving, nothing was in the house. All of those things.
Hot water.
We didn't have hot water for 2 weeks. These were things that, like, if we weren't willing to handle the inconvenience of, we would have just paid right away and we wouldn't have moved in. We maybe would have rented an apartment. We didn't want to take on that extra cost. So there was a huge...
We had a we had a storage unit for the first month after we moved in, and then we did the math, and we were like, nope, we're going to go...
I'm going to save that money.
Yep, we're going to store some stuff on the front porch
We did store some stuff at siblings'
we
houses.
kind of still do from time to time.
But that was the shift of like, do I think we could live here? Do I think this could be successful?
So
there were a lot of times where you were like, we need to quit this, or like this, the like challenge of living and building while we lived in it was really hard. And you're like, do we need to go back to the city? And my answer was,
I still say that.
yes, you do, but not as often. You've matured so much.
Well, I say, should we get rid of our animals?
Sure.
Well, maybe because let's try to recap a little bit, and then we'll continue. So I thought that we would probably be here for 3 years.
I didn't think we'd be here 3 years. I thought the house, we might live in this house for 3 years.
Well,
or let's set up the house so that we can give this a good 3-year go.
Yeah.
Right?
And I know that in the beginning you would say that we're only going to be in here for max 2 to 3 years.
This house.
The main
Not
shed house.
this property.
Okay, well, sure, the house. I thought that there was a possibility that knowing my chronic entrepreneurship of wanting to do something different every
Your high
few,
turnover of ideas.
that I thought that it was possible that I might get tired of this and then make everybody miserable and we do something different. It hasn't been that.
No.
And it turned out that our kids love it here. They're all farm kids, found farm kid friends. I don't think we're ever going to move. So we wanted to make sure that we had all of those safety nets, all of those exit strategies, so that if we could sell the property, we would not only get our money back, we would make money. We wanted a small home so that we were very tight in the budget of
honor that, yeah.
So that it would be easy for someone to either purchase the land and say, okay, sure, I'll keep this property, I'll keep this building on there, and either I'll move into it because it's not that expensive, or we could just split it. If you build a big, giant $400,000 home, that home is going to stay there. For a shed to house, or like a tiny house on wheels, or even a mobile home, an RV, you could separate the land and the home itself. So the thought process was that we could actually sell our main shed to house separate if we had to. Someone could buy it used. Now, once we put the porches on there and everything, it kind of became
more permanent.
Yeah, it was. For many reasons we've thought that I feel like I wish we would have done it slightly different, or at least thought through the fact that we would have liked it here. The studio here, we can move this anywhere. Yeah. It'll be a piece of cake.
So flexibility.
So then once we started building, we were building it, and that's whenever things got slightly more expensive, and I started telling Kelly, okay, so if we go with this choice, we're moving away from that 2 to 3 years, and we're doing it possibly maybe 5 to 7 years. Yeah. And you said sure. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You're like, yeah, let's do.
Yeah.
So how did we even get to that choice? I mean, I guess we were kind of doing it.
I think you said that.
We talked about all these things, and it really came down to barndominium or a shed to house.
I think you had to sell me on it because I had to see it.
Yeah.
Once I could see it. So we went to like a shed to house lot that was already finishing out buildings. Hard to see what an empty, looking like a garden shed, even if it's gigantic, what that feels like to live in. But to walk into a place that was already done, it had flooring, there was a little kitchenette, there were lofts, our kids were running up and down the stairs. I'm like, I get it now. I get it. And then we could start putting all of our ideas onto paper, and we spent months designing and redesigning and considering, how do we take functions from a small shed to, or like a tiny house on wheels, and how do we apply that in a shed to house so that we're efficient with our space? What would it look like in 3 years when our kids are a little bit bigger? What does that look like if
I also remember, sorry for interrupting.
How dare you?
But in the whole transition of all this was when the Shed to House Facebook group started.
I think it was more like
we created a Facebook group.
What could
we talked
you
about
do?
it. Yeah, and we were still, that was whenever you got pregnant with Finn, and we knew that we weren't going to be moving as early as we thought we were going to. We went through all it's funny, we went through all the marriage counseling and kind of came to some sort of finalization of that. And then we're like, okay, I think we can move sooner. And then you got pregnant.
I like how you made it sound like I got myself pregnant.
You got this very,
I feel like you contributed significantly to that.
So that allowed us, the pregnancy a baby number
Yeah,
4
time.
to do the Shed the House Facebook group. And really what I wanted to start it because I wanted to learn from a lot of other people. And we started realizing, whoa, even more than that one lot who finished some sheds, we were able to see what everybody else was doing. And it was so cool. We were seeing all walks of life.
Some were terrible ideas.
Well, that's why
Some were terrible
I'm
ideas.
saying we were able to see some people that were young like us, and they started understanding the walking away from the 9 to 5. They wanted less stress, more freedom. They wanted a smaller house, more land. They wanted all of those things. They wanted to use the Shed to House as that vehicle, like the Shed to House not being the destination, the end game of it. They wanted to use the Shed to House so that they could homestead, grow their own food, kind of being a little more ready in case something would ever happen.
And upgrade.
Yeah.
Even though they weren't upgrading the size of their home, they also took that fork in the road that was like, we're not going to go McMansion. We're going to go with a simpler footprint.
And then there was some people, like straight up, we learned that Shed to House also gets some people
they couldn't afford anything
It kind of worried us a little bit. We're like, oh shoot, like, is this a safe space for? I'm not meaning just like.
I'm listening to where you're going.
It was
with
a little.
this.
There was some things that were like we didn't know how to moderate the group of Shed to House because there were people doing unsafe things. I don't know how they got land to be able to put a building on.
And sometimes that was happening where people would get land that they couldn't put a Shed to House on. So we had to walk this weird line where it was like we created this group that soared to, tens of thousands. Tens of thousands of people. At
that time,
really quickly. And in that group, there was a huge mix. There were people like us who were like, we're selling our house so that we can go move into a Shed to House, and we're going to create community around this. We're going to have all kinds of conversations with all different kinds of people who are doing this. And then there were some people who were like, I live in my car. This is all I can afford. I can't even insulate this place. So
and like fire hazard.
So we had to have these conversations.
Like being super unsafe and like freezing. Like it was weird.
Just a really broad dynamic.
Oh, and then there was people older than us or more wealthier than
or more experienced.
Whatever. They were doing it as a second home. They were doing it as an Airbnb. So there was a wide range in that group. It gave us so many more ideas. It gave us the confidence that we could do it. Strategically, that's how my brain works.
That's what I was going to go next.
I was like, it kind of, in a way, pigeonholed us in a way that we're like, we got to do it. So
it was a challenge.
Yes. So we're like, we have this group. We need to do this. Like, yes. Why would we not? We always were wanting to do it. Then we have this group. Let's do it. Even if what I like about Shed to House is it does give you the exit strategies. It gives you the safety nets. It gives you so much flexibility to do other things. If we had to, we could. If we were forced to, we could move or sell the main house.
Right.
Because of 2020 and inflation, it makes it a little bit more difficult because we have so much lumber and material costs in there that I don't think that we could sell it for what it actually is worth. And I don't think that we can rebuild a building like that. I think it's better just to double down and use it as a space for a business, for a farm store, something like that. It just doesn't make sense for us to scrap it. Then we got the studio, and then we saw, oh my goodness, how great is this? Having two of these buildings that are not connected. The kids come in here and do quiet reading time. Kelly, it's our studio, it's our office. Kelly and I can work individually. We can just recharge here. And the fact that with Shed to House, you can keep your costs lower, and I think you can keep them way lower. Like, how would you keep costs a lot lower for how can someone who's like, yeah, I don't want the IKEA kitchen.
Yeah.
How can they keep costs
I
much
see what you're saying.
lower
Yeah.
and really
Yeah.
double down on that is a shed to house cheaper?
So in this room, like this is a good example. Right behind us is like shiplap, right? On the other side of that shelf right there. This is a Murphy bed. That's a whole different video, but it's about how do we make the most out of this space. This is our guest room. This is our studio. It's also, and it's really nice as a guest room because when someone comes and stays here, they're not even like competing for sound in our house. It's just their own space. We love that. It's got a little kind of kitchenette. It's where our food storage is. Like we don't want to have to go to the store every week to replenish. A lot of stuff stays right here. It's where we store all of our milk from our dairy cow because we need a second fridge for that. This is a really versatile space, but what we could have done super, super simply is we could have done sheetrock on the walls. We could have done plywood on the walls. There are so many ways that people make the most out of their shed to house spaces that have nothing to do with just a look. They want that look. A lot of people choose that look because what they're asking for in their vision for their property is less of a lateral move. They want simple fixtures inside. A lot of people want this to feel more like a man cave, more like a cabin in the woods. They want super duper simple, and they'll just get Home Depot basic cabinets, and that'll be where they put their sink. They'll get like their bathrooms. We have just stand up. Let me say that again. So in your bathroom, you might have just a slide in single. What are they called? Like you've got the pan, but like
it's like a kit,
an
all-in-one
a
shower
bathroom
kit
for like your shower, your bathtub, whatever. That is super, super affordable to finish out quickly. And I think the thing about this is
versus doing tile.
Even with a manufactured home, a lot of people are taking loans out on a manufactured home because it has to come with all of those things right away. This, depending on how comfortable you are taking time to finish out a bathroom, taking time to put your flooring in. We were really comfortable taking our time, and because we were comfortable with that, we didn't stress ourselves financially, and we actually got those things in pretty quickly. So I think that flexibility is desirable.
So what would we have done differently with the whole shed to house thing? I think if I would have known about United Portable Buildings, we talked about it in the beginning of the video, we would have done a 2-story. We didn't know.
Yeah. It was like signing up for something after the sale just happens. Like after we had already signed the paperwork, Casey, the owner of the company at United Portable Buildings, comes in an email, I think, and he was like, man, I wish I would have had a chance to talk to you about our buildings. And we're like, dang.
Well,
because the company that we went with wound up going bankrupt, or somehow they went out of business. So whatever warranty we'd even had on our main building, gone.
So, and that would have given the kids a little bit more head space. We didn't know that we were going to have a 13-year-old who's taller than me that just shot up so fast.
Snuck.
Yeah, it just was crazy. So we're already having, that's probably the thing is we want to be completely transparent and honest. If you have a lot of kids, you're going to need to decide what to do with the kids. I still think that a shed to house is you need to consider a shed to house being your first building on a piece of raw land.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so versatile that it's hard to not consider it. But yes, depending on how many kids you have, you might need to consider putting it on a slab so that you can more easily expand. You might want to consider building it on site on that slab so that you can expand. You might want to consider getting another building. We had to do it with the studio, or doing something with a teenager. But for us, we don't really want to have our teenagers live on that. We have considerations to make. because we have 5 kids.
We're outgrowing our building now.
Of course. I mean, yes.
When we moved here, our oldest was 7. He's now 13. When we moved here, our youngest was 2, almost 2. Now we've added another kid, and she's almost 2. That's really exciting to me. I think because of all the things we've talked about, we have options to build another building. Something that I deeply want is for our property to become a place where people can learn like we have, whether it's about shed to house, or it's about gardening, or raising animals, or moving from the city to the country. Like, we want space where what we've learned doesn't just die with us, but that like we can help people who are in the same position that we were in, 7, 8 years ago. That makes a lot of sense. And so these buildings can become places for those things, even if we build another building next door. In fact, we've got 2 different drafts of like just hand sketched floor plans for a third shed to house that would let our kids stand up in their rooms, for example.
Which both of those would be built by United Portable Buildings. They are a sponsor, again, of this video. They built the studio. So our main house was not built by UPB. This one was, and we can just see it's such a better quality
There was
built.
so much more experience with it too. Building our first shed to house, we were the guinea pigs. No one in that company had ever turned a shed into a house. So we were just like, hey, we've never built a house before. Here's our ideas. And they're like, yeah, that'll work. And you can see so many places where a lack of experience led to just like piecemealing it together. And that led to a lot of inefficiency that we couldn't come back from to make things new and exciting or like really useful in our space. The stairs is one of them. I think I've talked about it on other videos. That's something I would do totally different. But once we built our studio, everyone at United Portable had been building these places out for so many different reasons and had so much experience of like, yeah, you're going to want electricity here. You're going to make sure that, if you're going to put this Murphy bed here, do you want outlets in the wall? Like so many different details that you don't know about until someone who has experience talks you through it. So that's another reason that we're like, yeah, we've got to go with them for the next building.
United Portable Buildings is passionate about shed to house, about living, about people having alternative, more affordable living structures. It's just what Casey, the owner, it's a passion of his. So we have a link down below to a 3D shed configurator. You can build your dream shed. You can build it similar to this studio, our main house, or you can do their big 2-story Laredo, which possibly might be what we do. So we thank you guys. Go check that out. Build your shed dream, and let us know in the comments what are the questions that you have. Yeah. And if you've done this before, what are some of the wins and mistakes that you've run into and why you chose to do a shed house?